Power consumption, that is an important topic. I don't know how expensive it is to run the equipment here in Australia. Your electric bills may or may not be an issue, but in a lot of places around the world, electricity is getting more and more expensive, especially as fuel charges increase. So the question is it reasonable to use 400 watt and 1000 watt metal halides over our aquariums? Certainly you can have a successful aquarium without this high wattage. Power compacts, T5 fluorescents, they may add up in watts, but by far less than 1000 watts on a typical tank. There are various energy efficient lighting types. There are even dimming ballasts that are available now that if you use them, they can really reduce the amount of power consumption. The use of reflectors can have a tremendous benefit. So many times I'll be speaking to an aquarium group and they'll ask me, how many watts per gallon do I recommend, or what wattage of lights should they use over their particular tank? And the first thing I say in the answer is it's not necessarily just the wattage. You really need to consider the reflector that you're using, because a good reflector can almost double the amount of light that enters the tank. And so, that's really important with respect both to energy consumption and the success that you're going to have. Because if you have a very poor reflector or no reflector at all, the amount of light entering the aquarium can be very, very low. It's also important to clean the lenses. The splash from the salt water will deposit onto the lenses or the bulbs if you have bare bulbs over the tank, and that dramatically impacts the amount of light entering the water. You can set the bulbs on timers to reduce power consumption. So if you have a metal halide light, if there are separate switches for the luminaire, for the fixture, you can put timers on the individual channels, whether they be the metal halide or the fluorescent channels, and have almost a sunrise and sunset effect instead of running the entire fixture, the full photo period. I mentioned dimming. Pumps and pumping efficiency, you can really see that from the manufacturers these days. The pumps are getting by far more and more efficient, whereas a typical aquarium pump for a small aquarium in years past might be 50 or 75 watts. Now it might only be 20 or 30 watts, and be even more, have more flow capacity. So pumps are really improving a lot, and that's reducing the amount of power consumption. Yeah. LED lighting is gaining in quality, improving in results. There is unfortunately a company called Orbitech that has basically patented the use of LED lights over aquariums, and thereby they have potentially reduced the diversity and potential of the development of that lighting source, kind of like Microsoft did with the computers. Maybe some people don't agree, but I think you'll understand the connection that I'm making, that by dominating, sure they will create, I'm sure when they introduce their products to the market, they will be fantastic, but they will stifle the development by other people for the aquarium hobby. With that patent, which is really a very strange patent. All it is not in the design, it's just they said putting LED lights over aquariums. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next several years with that lighting. What is sure is that LED lighting will continue to advance. It will always have a niche in the aquarium trade. I don't know if it's going to take over. It remains to be seen. There are even other lighting sources that are being developed similar to metal halide lights, but they're not metal halide lights, that are sure to enter the aquarium trade. Maybe they're not as energy efficient as LEDs, but they have the same long life as LEDs. We're sure to see that.
What's the go now? I mean, I understand there's lots of development going on, but if, say an average small aquarium, would you go all fluoro, or would you go a combination of fluoro plus metal halide? In terms of what would you do?
It's truly up to you, because the aquarist asking that question sort of throws a curve in the sense that, you know, when you say, what would you do? The real question is, what are you going to keep? And many aquarists, when they say, what would you do, their goal is to keep everything. I want acro on the top, I want LPS on the bottom, and I want all these other things in between. And the truth is, when you set up an aquarium, you have to make a compromise. Either you set up 5 aquariums, or you just pick one and you're going to limit yourself as to what you're going to keep. If you like Acropora, okay, set up a tank for Acropora.
So what's wrong with your first choice where you said you had acro at the top and others at the...
Well, you can do that to some extent.
Say if you were doing that,
But I would recommend limiting the number of species. Don't every time you go, you're going to buy another one. It's
sure, but that's a good model to point the question out as to what lighting would you go for to set that up.
Okay, depends on the geometry of the tank. If it's a really narrow tank like this,
let's say it's 3 by 2 by 2.
3 by 2 by 2, which is nice geometry. Then the choice is yours. And I'm not trying to hide from the... You could go with all T5s. You could go with a combination of, you know, it's when you say 3 meters? No. 3 feet. 3 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet. A tank like that, because you're not 4 feet, you could get away with a single metal halide, but you're probably better off with 2. As far as the wattage, you could get away with 2 150s. If you're trying to grow Acropora, you're probably better off with 2 250s. You could go with just all T5s. With 2 feet wide, I would say a minimum of 8 T5s. Better would be 10.
Would you consider a combination of, say, T5s at the side with an actinic in the middle?
Yeah, so 4 T5s and 2 metal halides would be a nice combination, or 6 T5s and a single metal halide in the middle with the right reflector, because to get it to go all the way...
Would you really need to go beyond 150 watts, given it's only 2 feet deep?
You don't need to, but the people who are real acro weenies, who are really they like to get that extra punch of intensity.
So does that just mean that not only can you keep acro, but you can grow it?
No.
Versus just keeping
You can grow it fast.
You can grow it fast,
Yeah. You can grow beautiful acro with wonderful color under all T5s. You don't have to have the metal halides.
Yeah. Just not
so
fast.
Again, the choice is yours. The fluorescent lights, if you do a nice combination of colors, mixing the blue and the white, as well as there are red fluorescent, you know, the pinkish ones, you will get a more beautiful fluorescent color out of the coral. So if you're looking to get lovely color, if that's your goal, I'd recommend putting as many fluorescents as you can in the light fixture.
So you like the idea of putting in like a Pro Plus is like that warm red colour that butchers use to make meat look red.
That's right.
You recommend that on coral tanks?
You can have that on coral tanks.
Just to make it look good, or is that good for the...
Just to make it look good.
Yeah.
To have one.
Yeah.
And then the rest can be the white and the blue, and that's right.
Nice comment, thank you.
Yes. So, I mean, I didn't give you a spec. I didn't say this is the light system, because the truth is you can choose any of those. Okay. And if they're available, the LEDs could be used. Okay. So, you know, with the advent of this part of the hobby, the SPS Reef Aquarium, that's when the hobby really took off in power consumption. The people who started growing these corals like this, they added more and more water flow, more pumping, brighter and brighter lights. And then we had the rolling power outages in California. And I'm sure it had to do with the reef aquarium hobby. And nobody realized that. Yeah, you know, they not only had the 1,000-watt metal halides and all those pumps, they also had the chillers because the tanks got so hot. So I mentioned the pumping. There are smaller and smaller pumps with, you know, really, really low wattage consumption, and now there are also the prop type pumps, the stream type pumps available, and these move a lot of water without consuming a lot of power. There's another one, different brand. We talked about lighting. This company is now out of business because of that Orbitech patent, they went right after this company and took them out. Refugia, I'm glad